Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Cut the Clutter, as we keep promising you, is about decluttering issues, news stories and developments with complexities. So today I venture into an area of not great familiarity to me, with help from my colleagues like Ella Patnaik, our economics editor, which is the economic survey and the promises it makes, in fact the central promise it makes, which is taking your economy to $5 trillion, your GDP to $5 trillion in 5 years, that is by 2024. Now, it looks like a big number, $5 trillion economy. Everybody is talking about it. The survey says that this is the target the Prime Minister has given us, that will be achieved. And I can promise you, over the next 5 years, this will be mentioned all the time. This will become the new mantra of Modi 2. But remember, under Modi 1, in the first term, one expression became very popular with his critics, and that was jumla. Jumla means a ploy or a bluff or a political lollipop. That started with the promise on black money that if all the black money comes back, it will be like every Indian will get 15 lakh rupees in his or her bank account. Later it was explained away as Chunavi Jumla, as an electoral lollipop or bluff or an argument. Now, his critics would again be inclined to say that this 5 trillion also is a jumla, because 5 trillion looks like a lot of money. If you look at $5 trillion, it's a lot of money. It's 375 lakh crores. You would think that, oh, it's a big tall promise, this is also a jumla. But when you look at figures closely, and when you get below the headlines or under the headlines or behind the headlines and juxtapose absolute figures with percentages, a different reality comes out, and then you realize that it is not such a big promise. Today the size of our economy is 190 lakh crores. For it to become $5 trillion in 5 years, as I said, that will be 375 lakh crores. So generally it will double, but we are also presuming the dollar will remain the same at 69 rupees to a dollar. Now, think of this like a fixed deposit. If you had put money in a fixed deposit, at what interest rate will it double in 5 years? So generally you can check, any banker will tell you it's about 12%. So if your economy grows at 12% over the next 5 years, you will double the size of your economy. Now, Modi government is not promising to grow your economy by 12%. In fact, it's a dream for India. India's, barring 1 year, has never had a double-digit growth. Even that year is disputed, not for a long time. So India really, at this size of India's economy, can't look at Chinese-style growth of about 15-20 years back. Modi government in this survey is promising us 8% economic growth. So how do you double your economy with 8% growth in 5 years? That's because the total growth includes your net growth, which is the growth number that we talk about, 8% now, 7% last year, and also the inflation, because economy grows by that overall number. So if you have a 12% growth on a total basis and 4% inflation with 8% real growth, you will still get to this number. So this number is gettable. Second, you might say, oh, but it will be very easy. Government can just let inflation go up, and since that gets added to nominal growth, they can say the economy has grown, whereas the economy actually will degrow or do badly. That presumption you cannot make, because by law now, RBI has to keep inflation below 4%. And you might say that you can always change it, or you can always violate it, as governments have been violating Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, or taking a holiday on it. The fact is that at this point, as we begin, inflation is only 2.85%. So it's a realistic expectation. So if, presuming that RBI keeps inflation below 4%, if the government can actually give us 8% growth for 5 years on an average, it will get to that figure of $5 trillion. Mr. Modi is a master of marketing. He has found this $5 trillion an achievable target as a great marketing line. And chances are that unless something really goes wrong, or unless he or his government, does something irrational again, like demonetization the last time which slowed down India's growth. This is an achievable target, but it will take some doing. Now, there are two views which are not contradictory to each other, which I shall mention to you on how this growth has to be achieved. So, Ela Patnaik, who writes for ThePrint, she wrote an article a couple of days back saying how you can get to this $5 trillion mark. And she said the way to get there is to get your medium, small and micro industries to grow again. They have been suffering a great deal. They've been a demand destruction, jobs destruction, and they've been suffering also because of they were hit by demonetization, then GST. They've struggled to deal with GST. Also, they were used to living in sort of an untaxed environment. Now they have to compete with larger companies, and also because they have very poor access to credit. So in that article, she gives you data that tells you that compared to developed countries, or what is called as OECD countries, the developed economies around the world, if you look at them, about 42% of their bank credit goes to small industry, where in India's case, it's just about 6 to 7%. In fact, it's below 6% at this point, which needs to be rectified. And she suggests some changes, but also that banks alone will not be able to do it. You have to expand your banks, you have to issue more bank licenses, but more than that, you have to deepen and widen your bond market. So bigger companies, government are able to raise more money from elsewhere instead of going and taking the first right over bank credit. That's one. The second, the line, there are some interesting lines in the economic survey. We have a reasonably new chief economic advisor, but the line I like, which catches my attention, is about dwarfism. So say about 30-40 years back, this new mantra developed, small is beautiful. And we internalized so much that we thought that the big was ugly. Now what is small is beautiful, but the small must grow big and bigger and bigger and bigger. If you remain small forever, you are like a dwarf plant. You are then like a bonsai, right? Which gives you no shade, as the chief economic advisor said, and no fruit. But if the tree grows, it gives you a lot, and you don't have to keep nurturing it all the time. So the economic survey talks about taking away some of the incentives that persuade Indian entrepreneurs to remain small. The bulk of India's small industry, for example, employs less than 100 people, because the moment you get to 100, then many laws apply to you, labor laws and other things. So what the survey is suggesting is a gradual withdrawal of these incentives. So conversely, Indian entrepreneurs see the incentive to grow to a larger size, because unless you grow to a larger size, you cannot compete. Definitely you cannot compete in the export markets, because in the domestic markets, government may even give you tariff protection. I hope they don't, but they can give you. But in the export markets, you are on your own. So to be competitive, you need size. So the comparison he makes, I think, is a very smart one. He says, instead of treating small industry as dwarfs, let's treat them as infants, because infants will then grow into big men and women. So if you do all this, I think these are reachable targets. Now, this is my little talk simplifying some of the key aspects of economics, the economic survey and the $5 trillion GDP promise. In passing, I will also mention something else, and that is the spate of attacks on public servants on duty. We saw one in Indore when Akash Vijay Bargia, the son of senior BJP leader Kailash Vijay Bargia, assaulted a municipal officer. Then we saw one in Telangana when an Indian forest service officer was assaulted by a crowd when she was clearing encroachments. Then we saw one more attack on a forest service officer in Maharashtra, and now we've seen one more attack on a PWD engineer in Maharashtra, this time by an MLA, a prominent MLA, Nitish Rane, whose father used to be the chief minister of Maharashtra in the Congress, but has now left the Congress. The father has left the Congress and is some kind of an ally of the BJP. Now, there is nothing to declutter here, and there is nothing complex. It is very simple. There is a section 353 of IPC, which punishes a person for assault on public servant on duty. Public servants, when they are working, they need protection, they need their freedom to work, and they need their dignity. The reason you've seen a spate of these cases is that over the years, this law has been implemented very poorly because of political interference. Time has now come for governments to make an example of all these cases and to make sure that this law is employed correctly. Remember, this law then has 2 years of jail sentence plus fine. So this law should no longer be held in abeyance. This should be implemented. This is a terrible situation where more and more such public servants are coming under mob attack or VIP attack while on duty.